In late July 1945, World War II was entering its final days. Across the Pacific, the heavy cruiser USS Indianapolis was underway after completing one of the most secret missions of the war. Just after midnight on July 30th, 1945, the ship was struck by Japanese torpedoes. She sank in approximately 12 minutes. Of nearly 1,200 men aboard, only 316 survived. One of them was John Anthony Spinelli, a ship's cook, second class, from Gallup, New Mexico. John Anthony Spinelli enlisted in the United States Navy in December 1942. By 1945, he served aboard the Indianapolis as a ship's cook, second class, an enlisted role responsible for feeding hundreds of men under wartime conditions. Ship's cooks worked long hours below deck, often far from combat stations, but they were just as vulnerable when a ship was hit. On the night of July 30th, Spinelli was aboard the Indianapolis when the ship was attacked. Days earlier, the Indianapolis had completed a mission known only to a handful of officers. The ship delivered critical components of the atomic bomb, later called Little Boy. The destination was Tinian Island, the forward base where the bomb would be assembled. The cargo included enriched uranium-235 and essential assembly hardware. The weapon was not assembled aboard the ship. Most of the crew, including Spinelli, did not know what they had carried. The Indianapolis unloaded the cargo on July 26, 1945, then departed alone for Leyte. Less than 2 days later, the ship was steaming through the Philippine Sea, about 250 miles west of Guam and over 500 miles east of the Philippines. Just after midnight, 12:15 a.m., July 30th, 2 Japanese torpedoes struck without warning. The explosions knocked out power. Communications failed. The ship began to sink rapidly. There was no time to launch lifeboats. No coordinated evacuation. In approximately 12 minutes, Indianapolis rolled and disappeared beneath the surface. More than 800 men were left alive in the open ocean. When the USS Indianapolis went down, survival did not mean safety. It meant the ocean. Hundreds of men surfaced into water thick with fuel oil, wreckage, and bodies. Eyes burned, lungs burned. Some men were already wounded or concussed. Others had no life jackets at all. As the sun rose, the scale of the disaster became visible. There were no rescue ships, no aircraft overhead, just scattered groups of men drifting in open sea. The first day. The sun became relentless. Saltwater soaked clothing and skin. Fuel oil trapped heat. Skin blistered and peeled. Lips split. Eyes swelled shut. Many men stripped off clothing to reduce chafing and burning. Thirst quickly became overwhelming. There was no fresh water. Men knew drinking seawater was dangerous, but desperation overrode reason. Those who drank it often vomited, became disoriented, or hallucinated. Some tried to swim towards ships that weren't there. They slipped under and did not come back. The nights. When darkness fell, the water cooled. Men huddled together instinctively for warmth. Groups formed and reformed as people weakened or drifted away. Some prayed. Some sang quietly. Others were too exhausted to speak. Sharks began to appear. Survivors later described fins cutting through the water, circling groups. Attacks were sudden and terrifying, often striking isolated or injured men. Survivors learned to stay still, keep close together, and conserve energy. Even then, men disappeared. The second and third days. Time lost meaning. Skin softened and broke down from constant immersion. Salt crystallized as it dried, cutting into open sores. Jellyfish and marine stings added welts and wounds. Weight dropped rapidly as dehydration worsened. Many men became delirious. Some removed their life jackets. Others let go. The ocean did not announce when it took someone. A man could be there one moment and gone the next. The fourth and fifth days. By now, only the strongest, or the luckiest, remained. Those still alive were skeletal, burned, and barely conscious. Many could no longer wave or call out. Survival narrowed to a single effort: staying afloat one more hour. This was the condition of the men when rescue finally came. On August 2nd, 1945, rescue finally began, by chance. A Navy patrol aircraft spotted an oil slick and men in the water. The report triggered emergency response. Lieutenant Commander Adrian Marks piloted a PBY Catalina flying boat to the scene. The sea was rough. Standing orders forbade landing. Marks landed anyway. He and his crew pulled survivors aboard. When the aircraft filled, they lashed additional men to the wings with parachute cord to keep them out of the water and away from sharks. Marks saved 56 men. When rescue finally came, it did not arrive quietly. It arrived in darkness. The first surface ship to reach the survivors was the destroyer escort USS Cecil J. Doyle. Her captain understood immediately what he was facing. Hundreds of men were still in the water. Many were barely alive, and the night ocean hid them. Standard wartime procedure demanded blackout conditions. Turning on lights risked drawing enemy fire. The Doyle's captain made the decision anyway. He ordered the ship's searchlights switched on, flooding the sea with light. It was a deliberate risk, taken so survivors could be found before exhaustion, exposure, or sharks finished the job. The beams cut across the water, revealing life jackets, bodies, and men too weak to signal. Sailors aboard the Doyle were confronted with scenes they had never trained for. Men floating motionless, men waving weakly, men crying out for help, and others who could no longer speak. Many survivors were naked or partially clothed, coated in fuel oil, severely sunburned, covered in sores and stings, emaciated from dehydration. Some were alive but unresponsive. Others were already dead. Rescuing the survivors was slow and dangerous. The sea was rough. Survivors had no strength left. Crewmen threw lines repeatedly, lowered nets, leaned over rails to grab wrists and shoulders. Many survivors could not grip ropes, slipped back into the water, had to be lifted bodily by multiple sailors. Some were so fragile that skin tore when handled. Clothing had to be cut away. Life jackets were removed with knives. Every man brought aboard was a race against time. Once on deck, survivors were laid wherever there was space. The Doyle was not a hospital ship. Still, the crew did everything they could. Immediate priorities were shade, warmth, controlled rehydration. Water was given slowly, in small amounts. Too much too fast could cause collapse or death. Medical personnel treated severe dehydration, burns and skin breakdown, open wounds, shock. Some men vomited repeatedly. Some could not swallow. Some drifted in and out of consciousness. Not everyone could be saved. Bodies were recovered alongside living men. The crew had to separate the living from the dead, make space for those who still had a chance, continue searching even as exhaustion set in. This continued through the night. The Cecil J. Doyle was not alone for long. Other ships arrived and joined the search, but it was the Doyle's lights, burning through the darkness, that marked the turning point. By morning, the ocean that had swallowed hundreds had finally begun to give some back. For men like John Anthony Spinelli, reaching the rescue ship meant leaving the water after approximately 5 days, entering care while critically weakened, beginning recovery that would take weeks or months. Survival did not end when they climbed aboard. It simply changed form. When USS Cecil J. Doyle turned on her searchlights, the ocean finally stopped being a grave and became a place of rescue. For the men pulled aboard, burned, dehydrated, and barely alive, it was the first moment of safety they had known since the Indianapolis went down. As the war ended, information that had been tightly restricted began to surface. Public reporting and official releases revealed that the USS Indianapolis had completed a classified delivery mission just days before she was sunk. For the first time, survivors learned that the voyage preceding the disaster had not been routine. The mission's details had been compartmentalized. Most of the crew had been told only that it was urgent. The significance of that urgency became clear after the ship was already gone. What survivors learned afterward changed how they understood everything that came before. The voyage that ended in disaster had not been routine. It had been part of the final phase of the war, its purpose concealed from almost everyone aboard. For the men of the Indianapolis, this understanding came after the water, after the days of sun and thirst, after watching shipmates disappear, after survival had narrowed to staying alive one more hour. Only after surviving the water did they learn that their mission helped prevent suffering on a scale the world had never seen. The ship was gone. So were hundreds of men. The mission had succeeded. Survival did not end the story. For John Anthony Spinelli, it reshaped everything that followed. When he was granted survival leave, Spinelli returned home to Gallup, New Mexico. Local newspapers recorded what mattered most in that moment: a son coming home alive and a mother seeing him again. Spinelli remained in the Navy through the end of World War II and was discharged in November 1945. His service formally concluded. The war ended. Civilian life resumed. Survival was not the end of John Anthony Spinelli's service. It became a different kind of duty. When he returned home on survival leave, Spinelli came back alive to his family in Gallup, New Mexico, a moment quietly recorded in local newspapers, but deeply felt by those who saw him return. He completed his service and was discharged in November 1945. His wartime role formally concluded. What followed was a lifetime shaped by responsibility to memory. As the years passed, Spinelli remained active within the community of survivors and veterans. His name appeared repeatedly in newspapers alongside USS Indianapolis survivor groups, veteran organizations, anniversary observances, and remembrance efforts. He attended gatherings where the ship was remembered not as a headline, but as a roll call. Through veteran associations, survivor networks,